Hello everyone and welcome back to the 500 horsepower tournament. I don't have anything else to say, so let's get into it. So, for round 3, we're gonna be racing at iconic circuits from all over the world. Starting with Laguna Seca from the United States of America. 5 heats of 6, and of course, there's a point system. First place gets 8 points, second place gets 6, third place gets 4, fourth place gets 3, fifth place gets 2, and last place gets 1. And so, now that I made everything clear, it's time to get on with the actual races. So, for the first heat we have Lighter, Fancy Wreck, Reagan, A-Lord GT, Brett Fox, and Mojave King. And so may the races begin. Right away you can see Reagan managed to overtake Lighter and Fancy Wreck, who because of what just happened are now trying to make sure nobody else overtakes them. And making it through the first corner, it looks like they're actually succeeding in that. Through the first section of the track they go as Mojave King managed to overtake Brett Fox. And it also looks like Fancy Wreck is trying to catch up to Reagan, but it doesn't look like he's succeeding currently. And while that is happening, Mojave King is trying to reach A-Lord GT's overtaking distance. And once he builds up enough speed, he actually succeeds in doing so. And now heading into the uphill, it looks like Lighter is trying to build a gap over A-Lord. And from what I can tell, he succeeded. While A-Lord himself has been overtaken by the Countach going into the motor wagon's worst nightmare. And on the set corner, the Beeble bus tries to reach the Impreza's overtaking distance. But it unfortunately does not succeed due to having to brake earlier. And on the corkscrew, Mojave King overtakes Lighter and A-Lord GT almost spins out. And Brett Fox is just kinda unable to do anything as he is stuck in last place. And now that Mojave King has overtaken A-Lord and Lighter, he is using that opportunity to catch up to Fancy Wreck as well. And Lighter, now that he lost the podium, is trying to make sure A-Lord doesn't overtake him too. And so, everybody tries to build up speed on the start-finish straight to try to possibly do some overtakes heading into the second lap. Speaking of which, Mojave King caught up to Fancy Wreck on the set straight. Although actually overtaking the Beeble bus is not gonna be an easy task. And during that intense battle, Reagan is just trying to make sure he does not lose ground to either of them. Meanwhile, further back, it looks like Lighter is actually managing to keep a gap over A-Lord and Brett Fox, as they're both trying to reach Lighter's overtaking distance and not doing a very good job in that. And so, Mojave King successfully reached Fancy Wreck's overtaking distance. And he also manages to overtake him due to the Beeble bus having to brake earlier than others. And now the only thing standing between him and first place is Reagan. So let's see if Reagan is gonna be able to hold off the Countach heading into the motor wagon's worst nightmare. Mojave King builds up enough speed and manages to reach his overtaking distance. And heading into the corkscrew, it looks like Mojave King has successfully overtaken Reagan, and almost spins out on the corkscrew while doing so. And Reagan being slowed down by the Countach a bit allows Fancy Wreck to catch up to him. However, he is not able to overtake him just yet. As for Lighter, he managed to catch up to Reagan a bit too, while also building a gap over A-Lord GT and Brett Fox, neither of which seem to be keeping up with their competition at all. And on the start-finish straight, Fancy Wreck continues to battle against Reagan as they make their way into the third and final lap. The Beeble bus once again reaches overtaking distance, but isn't actually able to overtake before having to brake early. And it looks like the same thing is happening further back, as A-Lord GT is still unable to overtake the Shelby. And heading through the actual corners, Fancy Wreck gets gapped again. And in doing so, Reagan is making sure he doesn't get overtaken by the Beeble bus. And from what I can tell, Brett Fox was close to overtaking A-Lord, but nope, he's still last. And on the opposite end, Mojave King was able to easily build a gap over everyone in the Countach. And so, we make it into the uphill as the battle between Fancy Wreck and Reagan continues. And Lighter is still doing a good job at making sure A-Lord and Brett Fox don't catch up to him. And it kinda looks like A-Lord and Brett Fox are doomed to get no points here. And so, heading through the motor wagon's worst nightmare, Reagan properly manages to gap Fancy Wreck, as Lighter actually manages to catch up to the Beeble bus, making it through the corkscrew. However, overtaking distance has not been reached. And heading into the final corners of the track, it doesn't look like anything is gonna change between anyone position-wise. And now that Reagan is making it to the start-finish straight, it looks like the finishing order has been set. Mojave King in first place gets 8 points, Reagan in second place gets 6 points, Fancy Wreck in third place gets 4 points, Lighter in fourth place gets 3 points, A-Lord GT in fifth place gets 2 points, and Brett Fox in last place gets 1 point. For the second heat, we have Private First Class Chuck Patterson, Xolstis, Freddy Fazbear, Interrupting Octopus, Thunderstorm Gaming, and Mojave Queen. And we start the race with Xolstis instantly being able to overtake Chuck Patterson. And so does Freddy Fazbear as he's heading into the first corner. And now that we reached the actual corners themselves, the C2 Corvette tried to hold off the MX-5 but failed horribly, allowing Octopus to take the podium spot. And unfortunately, despite trying his best to hold her off, Mojave Queen also overtakes Chuck Patterson, leaving Thunderstorm Gaming as the only one that's stuck behind him now. And so, heading into this corner, Octopus is slowly catching up to Freddy Fazbear, and Xolstis is heading into the uphill with quite a respectable lead over everyone else. And while trying to reach the Fairlardy's overtaking distance, Mojave Queen catches up to Octo. Not only that, but she also overtakes him heading into the motor wagon's worst nightmare, and also beats him to overtaking Freddy Fazbear, claiming second right before she reached the braking zone. But she overshoots the corkscrew due to not braking on time, and smacks into Freddy Fazbear while trying to get back on the road, allowing Octopus to reclaim the podium as Freddy Fazbear went wide into the dirt. But either way, Mojave Queen is now off to catch up to her next opponent, and Octopus is just trying to make sure he does not fall behind. And from what I can tell, Freddy Fazbear going wide into the dirt didn't really affect him much, only falling down to 4th place. And if you're wondering, yes, Thunderstorm Gaming is still stuck behind Chuck Patterson heading into the second lap. And making it through the start-finish straight, it doesn't look like anything is gonna change. Heading into this braking zone, Thunderstorm Gaming once again tries to find an overtaking opportunity, but it doesn't look like he finds one yet. And Freddy Fazbear is just trying to gain back the time he lost. But while that is happening, Xolstis is trying to make sure he doesn't lose his lead over Mojave Queen. But unfortunately for Xolstis, it looks like Mojave Queen managed to catch up to the Devil Z no problem. And heading into the uphill, she tries to overtake him. But as you can currently see, Xolstis is not gonna let go that easily. Meanwhile, Interrupting Octopus has kinda fallen behind in the meantime, but not by much. But at least he's not losing any ground to people that are behind him. And speaking of people behind him, it looks like Freddy Fazbear is trying to build a gap over Chuck Patterson, but it doesn't look like he's succeeding in that. But while he's doing that, Octo is trying to make sure he doesn't actually lose time by taking the corkscrew carefully. And it looks like it worked, as the MX-5 is still in a decent position. Meanwhile in the front, Xolstis is successfully holding off the 512 BB. and he continues to hold her off heading into the start-finish straight. But with one lap remaining, I'm not sure if he'll be able to keep that up, but we'll see. Anyways, from what I can tell, Freddy Fazbear is not gaining any ground over the C2, but he's also not losing any ground to the C2 either. And on the start-finish straight, Thunderstorm Gaming finally has an opportunity to overtake Chuck Patterson. And heading into turn 1, it looks like Thunderstorm Gaming actually succeeded, but no, he didn't, as Chuck Patterson overtook him back. But then he tries again, going through the outside of the corner and into the inside, and actually succeeds, allowing the M3 GTR to finally get out of the last place spot. And now it looks like he is trying to reach Freddy Fazbear's overtaking distance. With the question being, is Freddy Fazbear screwed, or will he be able to hold him off? In the meantime, Xolstis and Mojave Queen are still battling, while Octopus is just chilling, due to his MX-5 not really being able to keep up with the 512BB or the Devil Z, who, heading into the corkscrew, are still battling, with Xolstis winning over Mojave Queen. And it looks like that continues to be the case, as both manage to take the corkscrew safely. And Mojave Queen continues to try to find an overtaking opportunity heading through the downhill. And it looks like she actually finds one heading into this corner. But fortunately for the Devil Z, it did not look like she pulled it off. And so it looks like Xolstis has cemented himself the first place, which is what would be the case if Mojave Queen didn't pull a last-minute overtake on the inside of the last corner, allowing her to claim 8 points while Xolstis himself earns 6. While Interrupting Octopus rounds out the podium with him earning 4 points, Freddy Fazbear successfully being able to hold off Thunderstorm Gaming, claiming 3 points, while Thunderstorm Gaming gets 2 points, and Chuck Patterson only gets 1. For the third heat, we have Charles Leclerc, Jakubek, Sophie, Marzo, Oatmeal, Skukolati on the road again, and Halo. And we are off the start line, as it looks like Charles Leclerc and Jakubek are trying to build an early lead, as everybody behind them have managed to successfully overtake Sophie by the first corner, which honestly is not really surprising to see. Either way, Oatmeal Skukolati is now off to catch up to Marzo, who at the moment is trying not to lose time to the Hatsune Miku Porsche. And despite him building an early lead, it looks like Halo managed to instantly catch up to Jakubek. And we head into this corner, as it looks like Charles Leclerc is slowly building a gap. And given his current situation, Jakubek is trying to make sure he does not get overtaken by anyone. But that might not be the easiest, given he's a Beetle in a grid full of sports cars. But while he is holding off Halo, Oatmeal Skukolati has found an overtaking opportunity on Marzo. And he actually manages to overtake the E-Type heading into the corkscrew, and even manages to almost overtake Halo while he is at it. While Jakubek almost overshoots the corkscrew, but luckily manages to keep it together. And Oatmeal Skukolati, seeing that Halo is being currently held off by Jakubek, is using that opportunity to reach his overtaking distance. And so the GT40 joins the battle between the Porsche and the Beetle. And heading into the final corner, Jakubek overshoots the braking zone a bit, but he must be really lucky that Halo did not overtake him there. And now that they reached the second lap, the battle is only gonna get more interesting. On the start-finish straight, it looks like the battle for the podium is getting really tense. And to avoid joining the said battle, Charles Leclerc is trying to pull away. And Halo being held off by Jakubek is really helping him in that. And Oatmeal Skukolati might be a bit farther behind, but he is still able to keep up with the Porsche. Marzo and Sophie, on the other hand, seem to be kinda falling behind. But either way, the F40 is chilling at the moment with an easy victory, as Jakubek continues to hold off Halo. But unfortunately, him having to brake earlier allows Halo to find an overtaking opportunity, taking the silver medal away from the Beetle. Not only that, but he instantly caught up to Charles Leclerc as well. But he gets gapped by the F40 due to Charles Leclerc having superior handling in the corners. But either way, that does not stop the Porsche from trying to catch up. And we reach the corkscrew with Oatmeal Scucolati overtaking Jakubek, who overshoots the corkscrew and goes wide into the dirt, causing him to lose all his positions to Oatmeal, Marzo, and Sophie. Man, that is just so unfortunate for Jakubek. But I guess what happened to the Beetle allows Marzo and Sophie to move up a spot. Meanwhile, Charles Leclerc, Halo, and Oatmeal Scucolati keep on battling like if nothing happened. And Halo continues to try to reach the F40's overtaking distance heading into the final lap. Heading through the start-finish straight and into turn 1, as it looks like he uses the braking zone to his advantage. And that maneuver allows him to take first place. While Charles Leclerc now has to recreate history as it's a battle between Ferrari and Ford. And heading through this section of the track, it doesn't look like Oatmeal Scucolati is gonna be going easy on him. And no offense to Sophie or Marzo, but it kinda feels like they just faded into the background of this race. And as for Jakubek, I can't even see him, that's how far behind he is. But either way, heading into the uphill, it doesn't look like Marzo is the fastest, but he is also not the slowest, as the E-Type seems to be keeping up with those fellers in the front just fine, who, speaking of them, are still battling for second place against each other, while Halo has managed to successfully gap them in the meantime. And it looks like Marzo actually managed to catch up to them on the motor wagon's worst nightmare, but heading into the corkscrew, it doesn't look like he'll be able to overtake either of them, cause it looks like it's another case of someone not being able to reach overtaking distance. Anyways, the battle between the F40 and the GT40 all comes down to the final section of the track. And as it reaches the start-finish straight, the Hatsune Miku Porsche comes out on top between everyone. And as Halo is now about to reach the finish line, he is officially first, with Charles Leclerc nearly placing second over Oatmeal Scucolati, who's third, while Marzo's fourth, Sophie is fifth, and Jakubek is sixth. For the fourth heat, we have W12, SVTVP, Pin, Arcadely, Zetsu, and Ferrari. And here we go, as this seems to be a pretty strong lineup. Pin alongside W12 is trying to build an early lead by overtaking SVTVP on the start line, but it looks like SVTVP actually overtakes him back on the first corner. Not only that, but it also looks like Zetsu and Arcadely were overtaken by Ferrari, who is now trying to take the podium away from the hippie. But first, he needs to reach Pin's overtaking distance, which is definitely not gonna be easy. And so, we head into this corner as it looks like SVTVP is trying to keep up with W12. But from what I can tell, it doesn't look like he's reaching overtaking distance instantly, as the Audi TT proves to be not actually that slow. If anything, it's actually quite fast here. But either way, SVTVP reaches overtaking distance, but gets instantly gapped right after that, allowing Pin to catch up to him a bit along with Ferrari. And heading into the corkscrew, the race is getting really interesting. And it looks like Pin nearly overshot the corkscrew and Ferrari almost spun out. But luckily, they were able to make it stick. And despite losing a bit of time, Ferrari didn't actually move down a spot. And I guess the downhill also allowed W12 to gap SVTVP a bit. And heading into the start-finish straight, it looks like everybody is holding up strong. And SVTVP continues to try to take the lead from W12 as the second lap is about to begin. Meanwhile, further back, it looks like Ferrari has actually managed to gap Arcadely and Zetsu. And he also uses this braking zone to his advantage to try to catch up to the Hippie and succeeds in doing so. Same, however, cannot be said about SVTVP, as the C7 Corvette is yet to reach the Audi TT's overtaking distance. And it also looks like Zetsu is losing ground to Arcadely, who is managing to keep up with the C8 Corvette no problem. As for Pin, he was easily able to gap Ferrari in the corners. And in front of the Hippie, it looks like the C7 Corvette nearly reaches Audi TT's overtaking distance. And heading into the uphill, it looks like their duel is getting really intense. And reaching this corner, it looks like SVTVP finally found an overtaking opportunity on W12. He now just needs to successfully pull it off if he wants to take the lead. Meanwhile, in the back, it looks like Zetsu is trying to overtake Arcadely. Now, despite having a successful overtake, his run on the corkscrew was anything but successful. And in the back, Zetsu's overtake was not successful either. And if you're wondering, yes, SVTVP overshooting the corkscrew allows W12 to reclaim the lead, while Ferrari and Pin are still battling against each other for the podium spot. What can I say? It looks like nothing really changed position-wise between anyone for pretty much the whole lap. And making their way into the third and final lap, Zetsu is trying to overtake Arcadely again but not succeeding. While in the front, W12 continues to dominate the race. And heading into turn 1, it looks like Ferrari has nearly overtaken Pin. But the Hippie is just doing everything in its power to make sure it doesn't lose the podium. Meanwhile, in the back, despite Zetsu having similar pace to Arcadely, the RGT is actually gapping his Vision GT. The duel between W12 and SVTVP continues as they're heading into the uphill section now, with Pin following them not far behind. And an event from the last lap repeats itself here. SVTVP reaches overtaking distance on the uphill but is unfortunately unable to overtake. And heading through the set uphill, it looks like Ferrari actually manages to catch back up to Pin. And going to the motor wagon's worst nightmare, W12 continues to hold off the C7 Corvette. And they are both about to reach the corkscrew as nothing proceeds to change position-wise. Pin nearly overshot the corkscrew, but luckily he was able to keep his podium spot over Ferrari. In the meantime, Zetsu has been gapped by Arcadely again, as the Vision GT just fails to compete against the RGT. And now that they all reach the final corner, it looks like Pin was indeed successful at holding off Ferrari. With no last-minute overtakes on the final corner, the finishing order seems to be set in stone. W12 in first place gets 8 points, SVTVP in second gets 6, Pin in third gets 4, Ferrari in fourth gets 3, Arcadely in fifth gets 2, and Zetsu in dead last gets 1. For the fifth heat, we have Buck Sargent, Howard Hughes, Max Verstappen, Virgil, me, Tom the Cat, and Julie Canotto. The race starts with Buck Sargent trying to hold off others that are behind him, but unfortunately doesn't succeed as Max Verstappen overtakes him heading into turn 1. And heading through the set corner, so does my 996 and Tom the Cat's Tesla, meaning that he has already lost the podium. Wow, that was quick. And now the only people stuck behind him are Julie Canotto and Virgil, as the Firebird is trying to make sure it does not lose positions to them too. And while that is happening, Tom the Cat, me, and Max Verstappen are using that opportunity to pull away a bit. But unfortunately, that opportunity doesn't last very long as Julie Canotto manages to overtake Buck Sargent, and so does Virgil. And now they are both off to catch up to Tom the Cat. who at the moment is battling me and Max Verstappen heading into the motor wagon's worst nightmare. And heading into the next braking zone, Tom the Cat goes for the overtake on my 996 and succeeds in the said overtake as I spun out on the corkscrew, causing me to fall down to 5th place as Virgil and Julie Canotto have moved up a spot, while Max Verstappen and Tom the Cat continue battling for 1st place, and also making sure the RX Vision doesn't instantly catch up to them. Tom the Cat reaches the M2's overtaking distance, however, he is not able to overtake him just yet. But I'm sure there's gonna be more opportunities for him to overtake on the 2nd lap. And so, they're making it through the start-finish straight as it looks like the Tesla has actually overtaken the M2. But as Tom the Cat brakes late into turn 1, Max Verstappen easily overtakes him back. Luckily, despite going wide, he was still able to stay ahead of the RX Vision, which itself has already caught up to the Tesla, while Virgil and I are kinda getting left behind despite not actually being that slow. But yeah, from what I can tell, my 996 didn't really recover much after the whole spinning out situation, while Virgil in the LFA is just struggling to keep up with the podium, as it looks like Julie Canotto, Tom the Cat, and Max Verstappen are proving to be really competitive here. But anyways, heading into the motor wagon's worst nightmare, the Tesla and the M2 competition have successfully gapped Julie Canotto a bit, and they both continue to hold him off heading into the corkscrew, which despite Tom the Cat not having the best handling out there was no problem for him. As for Julie Canotto, he nearly spun out, and same can be said about the LFA and 996, causing all 3 of us to lose a bit of time. And now that they made it through the downhill section unscathed, the duel between Max Verstappen and Tom the Cat gets even more interesting as Tom the Cat nearly overtakes the M2 competition on the final corner. And going into the final lap, it looks like Tom the Cat finds another overtaking opportunity on the start-finish straight. Unfortunately, he wasn't quite able to pull it off. And as they reach turn 1, Tom the Cat smacks into Max Verstappen, but unfortunately didn't find another overtaking opportunity. Meanwhile, Julie Canotto gets gapped again, as it doesn't look like anything is gonna change position-wise. Tom the Cat is still failing to overtake Max Verstappen, me and Virgil are still failing to keep up with the podium, and Buck Sargent is still a lost cause. But either way, looking back at the front of the grid, it looks like something is actually gonna happen between them. As you can see, Tom the Cat finds another overtaking opportunity and takes it, successfully taking the lead from Max Verstappen. As for the RX Vision, it was able to reach overtaking distance, but it wasn't able to overtake. And he once again reaches overtaking distance on the motor wagon's worst nightmare, but unfortunately no overtake. And so, they have now reached the corkscrew, which Tom the Cat overshoots really badly, allowing Max Verstappen to reclaim the lead on the downhill. Not only that, but it looks like Julie Canotto has overtaken him as well. However, he didn't lose the podium yet, as the Lexus LFA seems to be right behind him. And heading into the final corner, it looks like he is able to hold off Virgil at least. Now onto the start-finish straight they go, as it looks like Tom the Cat goes wide again, allowing Virgil to take his podium, which is just really unfortunate. Either way, Max Verstappen gets 8 points, Julie Canotto gets 6, Virgil gets 4, Tom the Cat gets 3, I get 2, and Buck Sargent gets 1. And these are the current standings. Honestly, this round was a lot more entertaining than I initially thought it would be. And hopefully the other 2 tracks that we race on are gonna give us the exact same level of entertainment. And that's about it for part 1 of round 3. If you enjoyed it, which I know you did, like the video. and maybe even consider subscribing. I would really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in part 2.